Some of the biggest crypto whales in the space are now starting to turn bearish. Should you be worried? And what should you be doing over the next few weeks to prepare your portfolio? That's exactly what we are going to be discussing in today's video. And I also have a strategy for you guys to navigate the next few weeks in crypto that I believe can make you a lot of money, but also protect you against downside. I think that if you implement this strategy, your portfolio will be in a much better position come next year, and your likelihood of picking winners in the market will significantly increase. So it's going to be, I think today, an informative show that is going to give you a balanced look at what some of the opinions are right now in the market, especially from some of the biggest crypto whales. They are starting to get a little bit antsy, and some have started to turn bearish. So I want to unpack that, tell you guys whether I agree with that or not, and then show you what my plan is with the specific altcoins that I'm looking at heading into the end of the year. If you want daily crypto alpha, make sure you do click that subscribe button down below and hit that post notification bell, because I'm uploading here every single day, giving you the latest crypto market updates and alpha to help you make money in the market. Over the last few weeks, we've had some amazing trades. I think generally we've had a pretty good read on the market here on this channel and have done really, really well, but I want to continue to help navigate you through this period, because obviously as price goes up, the dynamics do start to shift a little bit. We've already started to see that rotation now from Bitcoin into alts. We've seen alts really perform and run up into this resistance level here on total 3. And the types of coins and the types of narratives that are now performing are shifting very rapidly. We had that whole XRP, like old coin rotation last week. Before that, we had AI agents. We've seen gaming starting to wake up over the last few days. We've seen the L1 trade start to come back. So make sure you are watching these videos daily for the latest information, because the space is changing rapidly, and that's what happens as you get further into alt season. As the cycle progresses, the rotations get faster, things get noisier, people become louder, and the risk actually increases of opening new positions. So I think the strategy that I'm going to show you later in the show, which showcases an indicator which I've never showed you on the show before, is going to really help you actually pick the alts that are going to make money and have a good risk reward proposition versus the likelihood of downside in the market and versus other altcoins in the market. Firstly, let's just chat about Bitcoin very quickly. It pushed up to 100K. It started to reject a little bit. I don't think there's necessarily any major red flags looking at the Bitcoin price, but I mean, it has run up a lot, right? So at some point I am expecting a pullback. I don't necessarily want to make any predictions for the next few days, because if it goes to 105K or if it drops down to 95K, who knows? Either is just as possible. That's not really how I'm trading right now. I'm not a short-term leverage trader. The strategies that I'm implementing right now are across a multi-month time frame, so I don't really feel like I need to time directionality in the short term. If you are overexposed, should you have some stable coins? Absolutely. If you made a lot of profits on certain alts, should you be taking profits? Absolutely. Even I've increased my stablecoin weighting roughly from 15%. I think it's now sitting around 22%, and I'm probably going to go up to around 25% by the end of the week, just because that's where I personally feel comfortable. That doesn't mean that I'm necessarily overtly bearish. We will get into the more nuanced opinion on the market in a minute here, looking at some of the expert takes. But generally speaking, if you have made money in the market, even if you think the market's going to continue going up, taking profits is never a bad idea, because that is how you get dry powder to take advantage of dips. If we do get a dip in the next few weeks, like some people are calling for, well, you'll want dry powder to actually be able to capitalize on that. Looking at Bitcoin dominance, it paints a pretty good picture for alts, to be honest, having this weekly money noodle break, as you can see here, that exhibits a reversal in momentum from bullish momentum for Bitcoin to bullish momentum for altcoins. We haven't actually seen Bitcoin dip during this period, so Bitcoin has gone up. Altcoins are just outpacing Bitcoin, and that is what you end up calling and defining an altcoin season, which is also highlighted via the altcoin season index, which is now officially stating that we are in altcoin season as we've breached the 75% threshold, which is the threshold, the technical threshold for an altcoin season. This is a very good momentum gauger though, this Bitcoin dominance chart for where the current mind share and capital is going in the market, and it's definitely going towards the altcoins right now. If you look up Google Trends, you can see searches for alts are significantly increasing. People want to know what alts to buy. a lot of newbies that are coming into the market, or people from last cycle, the normies coming back into the market, they aren't really asking, hey, should I buy Bitcoin now? They're more so going like, hey, should I buy XRP, Doge, moving down the risk curve? Should I buy Memecoins? That's more, I think, where the retail mindset is right now. And it's important to understand what that mindset is, because that typically ends up leading price action in the market. So I do think alts will probably continue to outperform Bitcoin into 2025. Will we see periods where dominance starts to increase? Especially on dips, yes. If we do get a dip in the next couple of weeks, Bitcoin probably pushes up back into this zone. But I think eventually we will make lower lows on dominance, and that will eventually mark like that altcoin peak. I'll talk about slightly later in the show the exact date I think that peak will happen. I have the data based on the last cycles, which give you a bit of a range as to when I think altcoins and Bitcoin could peak for the cycle. I think that is on a lot of people's minds right now. Looking at total 3, it has headed into this resistance zone where it's currently rejecting off. Look, the real fun for alts doesn't happen until you have a clean break of this zone. I do think we do get an all-time high break on alts. I do think alts go into price discovery. But I also think it's wise to maintain just a little bit of caution, because we are technically into resistance right now. And it's not just total 3 we're heading into resistance on. It's also the others chart. So you have altcoins which have run up really, really aggressively now into a major resistance zone. Could we just break right now and go straight into price discovery? Absolutely. And I would love that. But I'm also a realist, and this for me is a decent TP zone, because we could reject here and consolidate sideways for a bit before having that breakout, that big breakout next year. I think that's definitely a possibility for alts. So I wouldn't, if you haven't been in the market now, be really inclined to FOMO into the market, just considering the fact, look, alts have run up a lot. We are heading into resistance. It does make sense for a cool down at some point. And actually, it's on those dips where you really want to capitalize on buying. It's not during pumps where you actually make the most money. It's on trend shifts, which I'm going to show you an indicator for later in the video, which can really help you get good positioning. But also, after a trend shift, capitalizing on altcoins during dips. And I still think, like, if I was completely out of the market right now, I would be waiting for extreme red days or those dips to happen to reposition or position for the first time in the market if you're just entering crypto again. So I know it's sometimes painful to like wait and have patience, but at the end of the day, that's what's needed in the space if you want to get good entries. You can FOMO in now if you want, but your entries just won't be as great as a risk reward perspective, maybe looking, in a few months' time. I think everyone will make money, but those that manage to execute and stick to a plan, they're just going to make a lot more money. On the total 3 chart here, though, as I said before, I do think altcoins push up, as I said on yesterday's show, to the $2 trillion mark, which would represent a 2x. Altcoins would obviously perform really well. So I'm still bullish from a multi-month perspective that we do end up breaking and having that really big altcoin run. Obviously now we're already doing really well, but I think the big run happens next year. Probably in Q1 next year, but I do have some dates that I do want to reference. And even during this initial run, during this period that we've had into the previous all-time high on total 3, like some of our trades have been absolutely mind-blowing. Even on a coin like PINLINK, over the last week alone, 1 to 2 weeks, it's gone from 50 cents and it's a 5x up to $2.50. And I actually did share this on the YouTube show 12 days ago when it was at 50 cents. And now it's sitting at $2.50. Discord members also got the early alpha even before that on the 26th of November when it was sitting at 40 cents, which is absolutely wild. It was down here, and members in the group printed a lot of cash on that as well. So some of our trades in this recent period, Imperial as well, I think is up like a 6 or 7x. These are all over the last 2 weeks. They've been absolutely amazing. And if you do want that early alpha, do make sure to join the Mars High Club, because it's been an amazing community to be a part of. And that is also where I post my earliest alpha. Every time I make a portfolio adjustment, I'm actually making a big one over the next couple of days, selling out of a big position of mine and buying an entirely new position. I do update the Discord first in my alpha channel. Like even a couple days ago, I spoke about a new DPIN coin. It went from 30 cents. Now it's sitting at $1. I still think it can go to $5. But even that's like an example over the past 48 hours of some of the members cooking, and you can see some of the profits here in the group. It's been amazing to see everyone print money together. So if you do want to be a part of a community for this next period, which I think is going to be really vital as we head into this acceleratory phase, if you really want to maximize it, come be a part of the Mars High Club, link in the description below. Although the market has been bullish though, and although we have been on a major run, there are some big names calling for a top soon. And I want to run through some of these names and read out some of these opinions and then give you my thoughts as to whether I am expecting a local top soon or even a cycle top soon. And then we'll get into the trending indicator that I'm using to get better entries on altcoins and pick the right altcoins to be exposed to in the market right now. Because you can be trapped in the wrong alts right now and you may significantly underperform even if total 3 does break out. So it's going to be really important to simplify your strategy over the next few months and go for the altcoins which are exhibiting a certain trend shift. So Eugene here is the first one that I saw on my feed starting to get a little bit antsy yesterday. There's been a few traders. He basically said that he's expecting us to get a local top sometime in December. Interesting that he's not saying cycle top. So I think there's been a lot of discussion around a local top happening in mid-January around maybe Trump's inauguration. That would act as like a reasonable stopping point for the market. Eugene's saying he thinks it happens within the next few weeks, potentially. Maybe in 2 weeks, just around the Christmas period. Eugene, by the way, is one of the best traders on CT. He posts regularly his P&L. He makes tens of millions of dollars. I really, really respect him. So when he has an opinion, I do listen. And although I don't necessarily think he's an oracle, I do tend to also juxtapose against my own opinions as well to just make me question things like, could we actually cool down in December? It's never wise to say oh, the market's just going to keep pumping. Just stick to your bias too heavily. Everything's going to moon tomorrow. Everything's going to always question it. Could we? Could we? And if we do, how can I prepare? I think it's also more important in the market though to have a macro thesis rather than a short-term thesis, because if you have a macro thesis that, okay, alts top end of Q1, Q2 next year, for example, we'll run through the data in a minute. Then you can reverse engineer that and say, okay, if we do get a local top in December, that's probably a good time to make sure I have some stables to buy back in if we do end up getting a dip. So Eugene saying we'll get a local top here. One dynamic I do want to point out though is that Bitcoin has so many bullish factors behind it that are propelling price higher. Like the macro setup for 2025 genuinely looks really good. And there is so much spot bidding and demand that's happening through the Bitcoin ETFs that for me, a major Bitcoin pullback, in my opinion, probably isn't going to come. I mean, maybe 90K, but 80K, 70K, that's not really what I'm expecting. I think maybe Eugene's more alluding to a slowdown in alts more so than Bitcoin. But then again, because dominance is just broken, are alts really going to slow? Are we going to see a dominance reversal? That's not really what the charts are showing right now. So if we are trying to preempt a local top here, it's not really founded in data. It's just a gut feel. So you can't really read too much into that, in my opinion. That's his opinion. I'll also read a couple other opinions and then I'll tell you my concrete opinion. Felix here says he thinks alt season's tapped out for now. There's a couple comments that are agreeing with him. Waz says, yeah, basically every big alt looks like this. Also, there's a cyclical pre-holiday sell-off, people selling for tax reasons. I don't really understand that. Maybe people are selling alts to pay for their tax bills, but at the end of the day, they're locking in capital gains, so they're creating a new tax bill. So I don't think that's too much of a factor right now. It is in a bear market when people are locking in losses to offset their tax. He says, I see no reason to be overexposed here, just mostly in Bitcoin and chill and keep some stables for holiday sales. I don't see a reason to be overexposed right now as well. You should never be overexposed. However, if you don't have any exposure to altcoins and you're just in Bitcoin and in USDT, sure, you may avoid a little dip that happens. Let's say we do get a dip in a couple of weeks. But then if the market on New Year's Day just decides, okay, it's going to start ripping again, what's your window to get back in? And that's why I don't really like trading like this. Since I'm not a trader, I don't like playing these windows. What I prefer to do is incrementally increase my stables up. Like I said, I'll go to 25, 30% stables, and then maybe I'll go back down to 15, 20%, but I'm operating in a 10% window of portfolio shifting until I think the cycle's cooked, the end of the cycle, when I'll start to go more aggressive. But right now, I still want to maintain exposure to the market because, as I said, things can rip really quick. And once Total 3 breaks out from 1 trill to 2 trill, are you really going to be able to time that? I mean, if you can, Waz, and I'm not hating on you, I think it's a reasonable approach here, but if you think you can time it. I don't think I can time it. So what am I going to sell my AI bags that I still have a lot of conviction in? Maybe I'll take some profits, right? Increase my stable coins a bit, but I'm not going to dump all of my positions because these things a lot of them are still so low in market cap that even if alts run from 1 to 1.2 trill, I'm making a further 3 to 4x. Even in the last couple of weeks alone, we've hit massive trades like PINLINK and EMP. Like, those have been insane gainers. If I was out of the market for the last week or so, I would have missed a 4 or 5x. I would have missed a 7x on EMP. That makes no sense. Even if you put 10 grand into each of these alts, you've made over 100K in the last couple of weeks alone. And obviously, if you're trading with a lot more size, you made a lot more than that, potentially even millions. And these are just trades over the last couple of weeks. They're just examples, right, of profitable trades, but you only can be in those trades if you're exposed to the market. So for me, risk reward in an altcoin season, which technically we're still in, is just to be exposed to the market. It's not to be in or out at any given time. It's to maintain like net exposure, but also being wary of the fact that we can get like local tops. I think the bigger question that everyone's asking right now is like, could we get a cycle top? Because a local top's like fine, really. If Eugene thinks we're going to slow down mid-December, that may well happen. I have no data to verify that or not verify it, right? If that does happen, if you're holding some stables, it's another good opportunity to enter and play that last leg of the cycle next year. But if we were reaching a macro top, that would change things, because obviously you don't want to endure the classic 90% bear market drawdowns, which would be a lot more painful than a 20 to 30% local top drawdown. Horse here seems to think we are heading towards that macro top point sooner than others. He says, I don't care what anyone else says. We are far closer to the end than people want to admit. I would say within 1 quarter. Interestingly, though, he says the end for a bit. So he's not saying the end forever, the end for a bit. Interesting. After big price moves, the chatter often shifts to even bigger moves, multiples of the current price. Ironically, that's usually a strong signal that we're nearing the peak, and it's just one of the many indicators pointing in that direction. He is right in the sense that when everyone is expecting higher, that is often when you end up getting a top. Although if you do look at 2021, we were in that zone of higher for 88 days. We've only been in that zone for 9 days so far this run. So that zone of everyone getting really euphoric can just get worse and worse and worse as you go from 1 trill on the total 3 to 1.5 to 2 trill to 2.5 potentially, and maybe even higher. So it's like you can't really use an indicator like this, like an anecdotal indicator, like, oh, everyone's so bullish, as a sell signal, because everyone was bullish a month ago as well. It's kept going for a month, and everyone could still be bullish for another 3 months. And you got to keep in mind that the biggest gains happen towards the end of the run. Do you think this was it? Ask yourself, do you think this was it for the cycle? Do you think this little altcoin season was it? Like, we've waited years and we've broken out of a major compression range, and alts are finally now testing a major level, which if they break, could run really, really hard. Do you think that's all we're getting? Just a little taste and then straight back down? I personally don't. I think 2025 has enough of a macro backdrop to sustain a bigger run at some point. And although we could get that local top, that local cool off, as Eugene was alluding to, sure, I don't think that's it for alts from a cycle perspective. And as I said before, that's why I'm maintaining net exposure to alts. Let's actually look at some of the data here. Bitcoin price action is mirroring past cycles pretty closely. No, it doesn't necessarily need to repeat. It often rhymes. What if Bitcoin's in a super cycle now with the ETFs? That's a possibility. That's actually better for alts, right? Like, what if there's a scenario? Because it can go both ways. You could say, 3 data points for previous cycles isn't enough data to quantify that alts will keep going up. Sure. But you could also make the other argument, this is the super cycle argument, that 3 data points isn't enough to verify that we're going to top soon either. We could keep getting like these echo bubble rallies for like a multitude of months, if not years. That's an interesting thought, isn't it? Like, what if we're heading out of the 4-year cycle? I'm open to this thought because it's only 3 or 4 data points, only really 2 data points on alts, right? It's not that strong to suggest that like we have to top when other cycles topped. We could be getting a period where Bitcoin just shifts between risk on and risk off, and over time just climbs higher and higher and higher, kind of like gold has, right? It's just gone higher and higher, and equities have, they just go higher and higher. And then alts are just like those assets that you speculatively bid on to capitalize on the most aggressive part of price action, which we're in at the moment. So it is an interesting thought that maybe there is a local top, and maybe the drawdowns aren't as big, and then you get more runs for certain alts later in the year. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. Like, what about memes, for example? Like, memes in terms of being a part of culture, I don't think are going anywhere. So what if there are some leading memes which just stick around for years and go through bear markets, right? But they go through it on their own. Like memes go through their own bear market, and then they have a bull market just based on certain conditions. It's interesting. I think we were saying this last cycle as well. Like, oh, what if the drop won't be as big, and then it ended up being massive? But that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be massive again. It also doesn't mean we necessarily are guaranteed to have huge gains again. I think the point I'm getting at here is none of us really know exactly what's going to happen. I don't claim to know exactly what's going to happen. I just look at the data in front of me. I look at the trend most importantly, and I try to be on the right side of the trend. So if the trend's bullish, if the macro data is aligning, if the indicators are aligning towards sustained bullishness, I don't really feel like I need to or like I should be trying to time tops. I'd rather wait for a confirmed reversal, not nail the top, but have ridden the bullish wave longer for me to make more gains. And yes, I'll give up some of my top to current gains at that time, but I'll still make a lot more money than if I was offside. Basically saying like, don't try and time the top. So what if I do try and time the top now, okay? What if I think the top's in 2 weeks, so I sell in 2 weeks? I'm a little bit off, but I pretty much get it, and the top's in mid-Jan. But in that period, between mid-December and mid-Jan, altcoins double. I timed the top, sure, within like a 1 month period, which is pretty good. Most people can't time it within a 1 month period. But as that market continued to pump, there was a really big opportunity cost attached to that decision because I could have doubled my portfolio. So even though I might not sell at that eventual top in mid-Jan, and I might sell 30% down once we start to reverse, I'm still up significantly versus when I could have sold in mid-December, if that makes sense. So it's this motto of following the trend until the end of the trend that I like to approach in the market, because the biggest gains happen at the end of the trend. So if you're not riding the trend until the end of the trend, you're not getting the biggest gains, which is why I think trying to time the top in the short term is a fool's game, which is why I want to have a discussion now, which I think could really, really help a lot of you about where to focus your energy. Because I don't think you should be focusing your energy on timing the top. I think you need to be focusing on the real opportunities. Even if there was a local top in 2 weeks, what are the real opportunities at hand that from an EV perspective are skewing to the positive? You may be wrong, but you have higher upside of being right if you take these opportunities. Now, I saw a tweet from Ansem, which I thought was pretty genius actually. He said, instead of trying to time a 5% pullback on Bitcoin, this is a much better use of your time. Find alts breaking out of a sideways accumulation pattern, identify ones with the best fundamental catalyst plus likelihood for increased attention, buy them, wait till the trend flips and sell. So basically exactly what I was saying about following the trend, he came up with a system last bull run, which you can implement this bull run as well to take advantage of those trend shifts. So what I've done is I've overlaid the log Ichimoku indicator, which he uses here, with the money noodle indicator from the Mars High Club. And we're going to have a look at certain alts that are exhibiting this pattern of having a bearish trend flipping into a bullish trend. And then on this bullish trend, when you get dips like this, and that may come in a couple of weeks, like Eugene's saying, it may not, by the way, but if it does come, you're playing a trending altcoin. Now your likelihood of success is much better on that trade. That's one strategy. The second strategy is on the reversal here. As you can see, from bearish to bullish, you can open a preemptive trade to play an early trend shift into sustained bullishness. So let's talk about, firstly, the alts that are exhibiting this shift. So it's happened already. And then let's talk about some alts that maybe are here, which I think are about to shift. So I'll give you both sides of the coin. These first categorization of alts are best to buy on dip. So if we do get flush outs, these are the best ones to accumulate, in my opinion. These types of alts, I'm not going to go through every altcoin in my portfolio today, but they are the ones that line up with exactly what Anson was saying about having increased attention through fundamental catalysts and that are breaking out of sideways accumulation patterns. Obviously, they need to have good fundamentals as well. So the first one I want to take a look at is Phantom. Quickly, let me explain the two indicators here. This red and green indicator is the exact same indicator that Anthem's using. Difference is visually, it's easier for you to see when it's red and green versus gray and like light blue/gray. So it's the same indicator. It's basically a moving average. It's a little bit more in depth than that. It's on the log scale. And then you can see the tighter indicator here, which is the gray line. That is the Mars High Club money noodle. So if you are part of the Discord, you'll get this indicator, and you'll notice I use it a lot on the shows because that is your momentum indicator. This is obviously going to be a lot tighter. We're using the 6 hour like Ansem suggested in his tweet here. So this noodle is going to be a lot tighter. This is better for entries and exits. That's where I would use this. De-risking and getting in. So when, for example, on Phantom, when you see major dips into the noodle, if it's trending above for a significant amount of time, it's a great zone historically based on the trend to add. And then this log Ichimoku indicator, this is more for the general trend. As it's sitting further below the money noodle, it's not great from a buying perspective, in my opinion. It's not as good because you might miss a lot of opportunities waiting for a token to go into that range. Of course, there are tokens where these indicators are tracking alongside each other, but generally speaking, I think entries and exits, the money noodle is the best. That's the one in the Discord. And then Ansem's indicator is good for trend shifts. Let me also explain the trend shift, because on Ansem's post, you can see he's looking for this cloud to flip. The way I'm looking at it on my chart, and it's the exact same thing, is when you get these periods of red, these bearish periods that flip back into green, that is the signal for me to go bullish again. So there are a couple criteria here. Ansem is looking at altcoins, and I agree, that have been bearish and in an accumulation phase for many months. So let's look at Phantom. In an accumulation range for many months, right? You get that initial breakout, so the indicator ticks green, goes red again on a pullback, and then goes green again. On this flip is when I would look to reposition or position in the coin. That is if you are looking for preemptive trend shifts. If you're looking for continuation of an existing trend, you want to buy dips after this flip, retroactively. And these are the tokens I'm going to speak about now. So Phantom is one of them that has broken through and has had that trend shift from accumulation into bullishness. And like Ansem said, it also aligns with fundamental catalysts. It has Sonic upcoming. It has a likelihood for increased attention. It does fit this exact criteria he's discussing. If you can fit all these criteria, your altcoin is probably going to outperform the rest of the market. And I personally want to be positioned in altcoins which are probably going to outperform the market. Not trying to pick alts randomly by throwing a dart at a dartboard and hoping. I'm going to run through these relatively quickly. The next one is CHEX. Exact same thing. It had that flip at the end of November. I've been talking about it since 20 cents in the Discord and also on the YouTube. So many of you are up over almost a 3x now, a 2 to 3x, which is amazing. This is one of my biggest utility bags, but it also fits the bill in terms of fundamentals because they have fundamental catalysts like all of the new asset tokenizations that they're announcing. I think they've announced 300 million in the past week alone. They're going to have many more coming in the future, which keeps driving attention back to CHEX. Many partnerships also coming, which keeps driving attention. But ultimately, what's more important than individual catalysts is the narrative. And the RWA narrative, with this XRP utility rotation currently happening and Trump going into office and the expectation for more regulatory friendliness, this bodes really well for RWA tokens, and CHEX falls into that category as one of the leading RWA tokens. So fundamentally it lines up, and you also have the technicals lining up as well. You have this flip that occurred here, then you have bullish momentum. As I said, if you do get dips into the noodle, those are the opportunities you want to take advantage of. So even if you think Eugene's right in terms of like us getting a bit of a pullback, that's going to end up being an opportunity. But this is a good example of a coin that accumulated and then had that breakout. And on this flip, either you enter there or you get in on the pullbacks on the way up. That is called getting into a trending altcoin. Either playing the trend shift or playing the trend continuation. And as I said before, I just want to be on the right side of the coin here. I don't want to time the top. I don't want to time the bottom. I just want to be, for the majority of the trend, exposed to that trend. And I'll show you at the end, you can also play this strategy for the general altcoin index to get a bullish or a bearish read on the market. And I'll show you what that index is also showing because it's really insightful as to which side you should be on right now. ClearPool's another one, very strong RWA coin. also exhibiting a very similar setup. It's also demonstrating a very similar setup to CHEX, which makes sense because it's an RWA coin. They also have strong fundamental catalysts, like Ansem alluded to, with their Ocean mainnet launching very soon. It's going to be a purpose-built RWA infrastructure chain. Think of it like Mantra, but in many ways better. Think of it like Mantra, except it comes in at, a 400 mil valuation and not a $6 billion valuation. So you are getting access to one of the leading RWA infra chains that's been around for a long time and has proven itself for a fraction of the price. So I do like that from a fundamental perspective, but we're looking here for fundamentals aligning with technicals, and you can see the trend shift happening. On mode, this is a perfect example of exactly what Ansem's talking about. You have this accumulation range, this choppy bearish range, right? And then you have this point, and I actually called it right here on this flip, where it just flips into bullish mode. And I also called this in the Discord, I think it 1.4 cents, and it's almost a 5x up now, 4.5x. This was the perfect zone to get in when I called it, and now it's pumped, and now you're getting that pullback for trend continuation if you wanna play it. But I'm all looking at these charts on the 6 hour. I don't mind the 4 hour, but I think the 6 hour is a good mix. I tested both. Looking at a few others now, Aptos also looks pretty good. You have this downtrend / bearish accumulation period. And then you have this flip, which has recently occurred on the 6 hour. We haven't tucked below the money noodle. I mean, we briefly have, but we haven't closed below in a long time on the daily chart. This is the 6 hour though, so you're going to see these wicks a bit more prominently. It's been trending above. It's an L1 play. L1s have a good narrative. There's a lot of buzz regarding Aptos. I think it'll continue to go up. We're not overcomplicating things here. I'll show you the other coin as well, of coins that maybe are in bearish accumulation but could flip, because you got to play both strategies at once. A, trending altcoins on dips, and B, having a list where you have altcoins prepared that you think fundamentally align but haven't technically aligned. When they technically align, you can pull the trigger on those alts, and you can even set alerts for when you break these levels on TradingView. So you can have a hasn't broke yet, fundamentally strong, but watching for a technical break watch list on TradingView, which is really great. So you can see here, humans is the same. But firstly, let's continue on with looking at the alts which have broken for long continuation plays. Humans is one. It's an AI protocol, an AI agent protocol, which is a very hot narrative right now. It's one of the leading coins in that narrative, and it's a lot cheaper than virtuals. So I think just from a relative perspective, similar to like CHEX and Mantra, I think you have that like shelling point, which definitely could allude to further upside on a coin like this. And that's why I have quite a nice bag of humans. Once again, this is another one that I spoke about that's performing really, really well. So this one exhibits the strategy that I'm showing perfectly. You have this sideways accumulation, downtrend. Then you have the break. You have the shift from bearish to bullish, and then continuation to the upside. A few others. TARS protocol. It's another AI protocol that has been performing really well. I like the narrative here. So once again, going back to Ansem's point about picking coins with fundamental narratives, because you have the AI synergy, but it's also one of the leading AI proxies on Solana. So if Solana catches a bid in the future and the Solana ecosystem does really well, because there's this huge appetite for AI, I think TARS could do well in that environment. Obviously, it's still doing really well, right? Just with AI pumping. But if you get both, I think that's when it would really do well. And fundamentally, it does fit this categorization that I'm pointing out here very well. You have this sideways accumulation, this flip that happens here. That's the key flip to signal a momentum shift at 24 cents. And then you have the run to 43 cents and now the pullback back into the trend. Then you have Echelon Prime. This is another one. I spoke about this at $7. It's now $14. Also looks very similar to TARS. WMT is one that I spoke about at 20 cents. That's now 55 cents. Congrats to everyone that's in this. It was a painful ride to go through this period. We potentially got in too early, but this break was really strong, and it's been an amazing one to hold since then. So you don't always need to wait for the break. Obviously, if you're trying to be more of a technical trader, you can wait. If you have a fundamental belief in a protocol, you have alpha, which sometimes I have. Sometimes I'll just buy before I get the technical indicator, because I'm like, okay, at some point, the technicals are going to align with the fundamentals here. And that's why I think fundamental trading in crypto is always better than technical trading. I'm just telling you and teaching you a strategy to put tools in place to align fundamentals. But you need the fundamentals first, right? Because there's a lot of rubbish tokens, random memes, which look really good and follow Ansem's criteria here, but I don't like the fundamentals. And if the fundamentals aren't strong, eventually it's going to catch up to the token. Or if the fundamentals aren't strong and it hasn't exhibited the technical signals, maybe it never will because the fundamentals aren't strong. Whereas on WMT, the fundamentals are really strong, but now it's also aligning with the technicals. And then the last one before I get into the coins that could flip in the future that I'm watching is PENDLE. PENDLE just recently flipped actually. So it flipped like a week ago. So you see here, this red cloud, it's now ticking into green territory. It's also broken above on the 6-hour money noodle. I also want to look on the daily money noodle because this is a good indicator as well for higher time frame entries. Looks really, really good. You can use the higher time frame charts. The only thing is, and this is obviously the reason why Adsam's using the 6-hour chart, or you can even use the 4-hour chart, it's hard to get a timely entry on the daily. The best thing to actually do when you use the money noodle for entries is to look at it on the daily and then go down the time frame. So go daily, go 4 hourly, go 1 hourly, and try and line up confluence amongst all of that, because you're going to enter on the 1 hour. 1 hour is actually breaking down, so you might be like, look, I don't want to get in here, right? Today is actually not a good buy on PENDLE if you want to use this strategy. The daily looks good, but there's a bit of room to come down. On the 4 hourly, it's breaking down a little bit, and on the 1 hourly, it's breaking down a little bit. So this is a coin where you want to wait for all of the time frames to align. So it's not just as simple as picking a time frame and buying based on it. These indicators, like the money noodle, which is a custom moving average indicator, these work when you're lining them up across multiple time frames. The more time frames a signal is aligning across, the higher probability that entry is going to be a good one. You can obviously just trade on one time frame, but then you need to be sticking to that consistently across the board, or in the long run, you'll end up losing out. So those are some of the coins that look good in terms of having exhibited that flip. Now I'm going to give you some examples of coins that haven't yet, but I'm currently watching. A lot of the memes fall into this category. So I think memes are in an interesting accumulation phase. I really think in January or Feb, memes come back. That's my belief. I think until then, utility runs. So a lot of the memes for me are ones that I'm watching closely and I have alerts set up for. Mu is one. Mu has now ticked into this red cloud. If this does break soon and this starts to flip green for a few days, this to me could be an interesting reversal play, because if I just turn off the log chart here, you can see on the money noodle, it's really been wanting to break above. On the daily as well, it's also been above for a significant period. It's just now starting to show a bit of weakness. So you have this like inverse head and shoulders pattern playing out. But at this level, this support level, it could be either a bid that you take, or you can wait for the bounce, pull back, and actually play the reversal. So the whole point of using the log Ichimoku indicator as well is to help you identify when that reversal may occur. And this is one that I'm watching for that reason. GOAT's similar. A lot of meme coins are similar, but I'm just giving you a couple examples where you've got this expansion to the upside, but now this bearish accumulation phase. This phase could keep chopping for a bit until it eventually ends up breaking out. It's the exact same strategy that Ansem spoke about. Like you have this accumulation phase until it ends up breaking out. So GOAT might be in the early stage of that accumulation/distribution phase, but eventually I think it comes back as the leading AI meme proxy. And there are many of these. Many of them are memes. You can go through it in your own time, but now you should be equipped with the data to do this. If you want the Paradise Money Noodle, it's in the description. So as soon as you sign up to become a member of the Mars High Club, obviously you'll get all the amazing alpha in there, but you can also access the Money Noodle in the resources section of Paradise Island. That's Paradise's little section where he shares a lot of his alpha. You could see it here. You just go into resources and education, and you can access all of his resources, all of his videos. He has video tutorials on how to use the Money Noodle. You can get it here. And obviously he also has his main channel for posting all of his trade ideas. And if you want the log Ichimoku indicator, that's just a public one that you can search up. And I've just changed the colors a little bit to just help with my personal brain. Now, I said before that you don't just need to do this on alts. You can also do this with a macro indicator. And moving averages, at the end of the day, are pretty good indicators of trending. They're better than horizontals, obviously, because the problem with horizontals is they don't account for trend swings. Let me show you what I mean. So if I just use horizontals, not adaptive indicators, technically I could say, okay, it's a bull run as long as we're above 360. Cool. But what if this chart just keeps pumping? My invalidation's still here. So I'm going to end up round tripping the majority of my gains until I'm invalidated. Whereas a moving average, this gives you a much tighter inval. So when you're seeing the market start to shift, you can actually position accordingly. So for me, when I decide that the time's right to go macro risk off, it'll probably be based on money noodle high time frame breakdowns of total 3 Bitcoin, others, and many major alts like Solana on the daily, which we haven't done yet, and on the weekly. So I'm not really going to overcomplicate it. As long as we are showing bullish price action across the higher time frames, as long as we are in a trend, I want to continue to play this trend. Sure, you can look for mean reversions at times. You could say, okay, others is probably going to come back down and revert to the mean at some point. That may happen, but that's a preemptive thing. It could also just keep going up like this and wait for the noodle to catch up. So if you're doing preemptive trading, it's better just to take profits instead of making a huge directional shift on a whim. So I think the main lesson today I want to get across, and hopefully these indicators help you do so, is basically follow the trend until the end of the trend instead of trying to be like Eugene and maybe Trading Horse. Now, these guys have made a lot more money than me in crypto, and they're probably much better traders than me. But I'm also speaking right now to a more retail audience. So is Eugene actually on Twitter. And I just don't think the right strategy is to try and time this. I really don't. Especially if you think there's further upside this cycle like I do. I think it's way better to just follow the trend. And as I said, you're not going to get the best entries or exits, but you are going to capture the majority of upside, which is ultimately your biggest goal in a bull run. Patience has a great tweet here. I think a lot of you could apply this if you want to. They say, contrary to what your timeline might have you believe, your best success for the rest of the cycle is to be in 1 to 5 well-researched coins that you have high conviction in and then do nothing but wait. Honestly, not bad advice. I talk about a lot of coins on the show, and I think that's fine for people that want to hold 20 coins, right? But even for me personally, there are a few specifically which I have bigger size in, right? Lucky is a meme coin that I have a lot of conviction in and a lot of size in relative to the rest of my meme portfolio. PEPE is similar. CHEX as an RWA coin is a really, really big bag of mine. There are examples in my portfolio where I've actually done this. Now, yes, I've dispersed it a bit further than that because I want 3 or 4 AI agent coins, right? That's why I hold coins like EMP. I want, a few RWA coins. That's why I also hold Mantra and ONDO. But for me, even looking at my portfolio and maybe even yours as well, there's always going to be like 1 to 5 altcoins, which are like your high conviction bull market coins that you just hold for the whole bull and chill in. So I also want to make that clear. Like, yes, I talk about a lot of alts and I'm in a lot of these coins that I spoke about today. Like I have an Aptos position, I have a mode position, I have a humans position, I have a TARS position, I have a prime position, I have a WMT position. These are all going to do well. But if you really want to do well, I think it's good to have maybe 5 of these or 5 of your own coins, or even 2 or 3 coins that you put a lot of size into and have them as your high conviction plays for the cycle. It's going to make things easier to track. And then with the rest of your portfolio, you can spray and pray a little bit more. Remember, wealth is built through concentration and protecting wealth is built through diversification. So depending on where you're at in your crypto journey, you might look to do one or the other. I'm probably a little bit more diversified. And people ask, Miles, post your full portfolio. The reason I don't is because I don't think it's the best example of what the average person should be doing, because I'm also now with where I'm at in life trying to look to maybe spray and pray like a little bit more or just diversify a little bit more to like hedge against having too much in a few tokens. And I still have a few really high conviction tokens, as I just discussed. Whereas if you are trying to make it for the first time, it's better to maybe go deep on 1 or 2 tokens or niches at least and just go deep into them, right? And have high conviction. And then once you make a lot of money, then you can diversify out a little bit. So I think that's good advice generally for people. To summarize, concentrate to build wealth, to protect wealth, diversify. I do have a big update that I want to give in the Discord in 48 hours. I made a big trade I actually rotated one of my biggest holdings into a new token, which I haven't spoken about much before. But I made this decision because I believe there's a narrative shift that's going to happen in the market, specifically for meme coins, that I want exposure to. So I'm going to announce that in the Discord in 48 hours. So just giving you a heads up, if you do want to be the first one to get my full thesis on why I made this rotation, make sure you're in the Discord, because on Wednesday in 48 hours in the Alpha channel, which is where I post all of my early alpha, I'm going to be sharing that with you. And I think it's going to be a good one. that ends up making me a lot more money on memes throughout the rest of the cycle. So join the Mars High Club using the link in the description below if you want access to that and all of the amazing alpha that we are sharing in there. I will see you in the next video tomorrow. Hopefully you learned something today, and hopefully I gave you a nice perspective, a bit more of a grounded look at the market with a lot of different takes out there. Lots of really bullish people, lots of really bearish people. Hopefully I could just simplify things a bit more for you today and give you a new perspective on the market. Hopefully you have a nice rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.